never be led astray, and whomever Allah leaves astray will never be guided. And I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam is his slave and messenger. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منها رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تسألون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Today, inshallah, is a Friday. Jumu'ah Mubarak. Jumu'ah Mubarakah in this blessed day of Ramadan. We are, subhanallah, almost 2 weeks in. It felt like just yesterday was Ramadan, and we're almost halfway. This is from the blessings of Allah to make it easy on us. May Allah accept our fast, inshallah. Brothers and sisters, today, the topic that I want to discuss is the seerah of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, and specifically his interactions with the Jews of Medina. What lessons we can learn from these interactions and apply to our everyday life. So, the seerah of the Prophet is the life of the Prophet, and we're coming in sort of halfway here, which is the Battle of Badr. That's where we're going to start, and I'll give some context about the Battle of Badr and where we're going to go moving forward. So the Battle of Badr happened March 13th, which is 2 weeks ago, the anniversary, and also in Ramadan. Now, the Battle of Badr comes at a time, so the Prophet ﷺ was from Mecca, from the tribe of Quraysh, and when the Prophet was given the revelation and started to gather the believers, the mushrikeen did not like that, and the Prophet ﷺ ended up having to move and make hijrah to Medina. Now, 2 years after the hijrah is when this battle occurred, Battle of Badr, which is really known to be the most important battle for the Muslims. Now, it was between, obviously, the Muslims and the mushrikeen of Quraysh. And the battle was miraculous on so many levels. I don't know if we'll have time to get into all the details, but one of the reasons why is they were at every disadvantage. They were outnumbered. They didn't have the same military equipment. They did not have the same military experience. So on all accounts, they should have lost. But through the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the steadfast of the believers, the Muslims won. And it was not just a normal win, it was a shattering victory that left a lot of people upset. And some of these people were the Jews of Medina. So after the battle took place in the province of Badr, which is near the Medina, the Prophet goes back to Al-Medina, and the Jews were very upset. Why were they upset? Because they wanted the destruction of Islam and the Muslims. And in Medina, the Prophet was leading Medina. So the populations of Medina, as he got there, were really of three subgroups. There was the tribe of Aus, the tribe of Khazraj, and then the Jews. So there was three main tribes. Aus and Khazraj were Arab and native to that land. The Jews were not native to that land. They were migrated, as they always do, to a land. And they were welcomed, and they were living there, citizens amongst, but they were their own tribe. Aus and Khazraj, these two Arab tribes that were native to that land, most of them, alhamdulillah, accepted Islam through the Prophet. The Jews, only a few accepted Islam. And so, being that most in that land accepted Islam, the Prophet was the leader of Medina, and it was under Islamic rule. And of course, the Jews did not like that. This is one of the reasons why they sought the destruction of the Muslims in the Battle of Badr. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, unfortunately for them, we won. Now, the Jews were of three main tribes, okay? The three tribes were Banu Qurayda, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qaynuqa. We're going to talk about Banu Qaynuqa today, okay? Because in the interactions that the Prophet had with them. So after the Battle of Badr, like I mentioned, he, alayhi salatu salam, came back to Medina and heard of the Jews being upset. So he wanted to address this, and he addressed it specifically with Banu Qaynuqa, the tribe we're going to talk about today. And the reason why he picked them was it's said to be that they were the largest in number of the three tribes. And he addressed them and along the lines of what has happened in Badr can also happen here between us and you. And so fear Allah and do not betray these treaties. So the Prophet ﷺ had treaties with all of the tribes and the Jews. And there was peace. There was nothing going wrong with that. They were free to own businesses and take part like any other citizen. And so the Prophet ﷺ heard of them being upset that they did not lose. So he wanted to just address that and say, well, let's keep our peace treaties. We understand that you're upset, but let's keep the peace treaties and do not betray me, because what has happened there can also happen here. And of course, with the Jews and their arrogance, they said, we're not Quraysh. Quraysh, they did not know how to fight. And you guys took advantage of that. But us, we can fight. We are 700 men, and if there's ever a time that we get into something, you'll see that we can fight. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in Ali Imran, specifically addressing them. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل للذين آمنوا كفروا ستغلبون وتحشرون إلى جهنم وبئس المهاد قد كان لكم آية في فئتين التقتا فئة تقاتل في سبيل الله وأخرى كافرة يرونهم مثليهم رأي العين والله يؤيد بنصره من يشاء إن في ذلك لعبرة لأولي الأبصار. So he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O Prophet, tell the disbelievers that soon you will be overpowered and driven to hell. What an evil place. Indeed, that was a sign, talking about Badr, saying that was a sign for you. There was two groups fighting, one that believed in Allah and one that did not, and we granted victory to the people who believed in Allah. So surely this is an ayah, meaning a sign for you to take caution and take heed not to mess with the Prophet ﷺ. So tensions are high right now between Banu Qaynuqa and the Prophet ﷺ. And this, keep in mind, is only, it's less than a month after the Battle of Badr, and the Jews already want problems. So an incident occurred basically that reached the boiling point between these two parties, between the Muslims and the Jewish tribe of Banu Qaynuqa. And the incident was as follows. So the Jews at that time owned most of the gold shops, right? Always controlling the money. So they owned most of the gold shops, and when a sister came to purchase gold from this gold shop, the gold shop owner began to harass her and say things like, remove the veil, let me see your face, what's under your veil. And so of course that left her uncomfortable, and they began to quarrel. During this sort of dispute where the Jewish man is harassing the Muslim sister, people began to sort of come and see what the commotion was about. And the group of people that came was Jewish. They were Jewish because that was their area. And they came and actually started to aid in the harassment of the sister and saying inappropriate, immoral things. And during all of this, the Jewish gold shop owner sneakily was tying her garment to an object in the gold shop. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So he was tying her garment to an object, and as she felt like this is too much, she's being harassed by an entire group of people, she gets up to try to leave, and her garment is stuck to the thing. So of course, what has happened is she was exposed. When she came to leave, she was exposed, and they began to mock her. They began to mock her and laugh at her. And at this point, the woman screams and yells out for help. and a Muslim man in nearby came to her rescue, if you will, and saw what was going on, analyzed the situation, and he killed the gold shop owner. Subhanallah. He saw the Jewish man infringing on the Muslim women's honor and dignity, and he immediately took action and put him to rest. Of course, what does the tribe do? So the Jews that were in that area, that were also taking part in the harassment, they killed him. And I want us to think of this entire story and just think of back then and now, where we see it back then and where we see it now. All right, think about the comparisons where they kill you, they harass you, they bully you, they mock your religion, they enslave you, and then they cry foul when you retaliate. Okay? I think it was Malcolm X that once said that if you watch the media too much, you end up seeing that the oppressors, or you believe that the oppressors are the oppressed and the oppressed are the oppressors. And this is the reality that we're in today. They cry foul as they strike you. I never seen it before, subhanallah. And again, another key thing is a man defended the sister's honor immediately. SubhanAllah. So anyway, the news came back to the Prophet ﷺ that this had happened. And I want to take, again, note what true leadership looks like. He comes over to the tribe, he hears what happens, okay? He goes to Banu Qaynuqa and he tells them, surrender the perpetrators responsible. And they said no. So the Prophet said, okay, gather the army. There's no third option, right? Leadership today, what do we see? Criticism or a statement, or we cut political ties. No. The Prophet ﷺ said, surrender the perpetrators? No? Okay, gather the army. We're ready to go to war. Over a sister being harassed or humiliated, he's willing to go to war for that. And today we see in Palestine, in Gaza Strip, over 30,000 civilians murdered, of which 70% are women and children. Okay, so I know we just think of them as numbers, but 12,000 children and about 10,000 women. So I grew up in Roselle Park. Roselle Park's population is about 17,000. So it's wiping out the entire town and more, in just women and children. Look at how did we get here? How did we get here that we're not one leader is able to defend or even bring in a bottle of water to the Gaza Strip, where the Prophet ﷺ was willing to wage war over one incident, one person. SubhanAllah. So the Jews understood that the Prophet was serious, so they went back to their fortress. Okay, the Jews lived in a fortress, sort of enclosed in themselves. Again, similar to what we see today, hiding in tanks and armored vehicles and fighter jets, but face to face, they don't do that. Okay, so they went and they hid into their fortress, sort of enclosed themselves, and the Prophet ﷺ came about with the army and gave them three options: accept Islam, surrender, or go to war. Okay, so they did not accept the first two, so that meant bring it on, go to war. All the Prophet ﷺ did was order for the fortress to be surrounded. That's it, just to be surrounded. No fighting has taken place yet. And they were terrified. They were terrified and they didn't dare come out. The fear is in their hearts. SubhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the fear in their hearts. And then a few days later, they eventually surrendered in a very cowardly way, just like today, cowards. And in their surrender, the Prophet ﷺ was going to order their execution, all of them. He wanted to make a statement that you don't mess with a Muslim sister or a Muslim brother. One person's death is not going to just go in vain. And through a dialogue with someone named Ibn Salul, Ibn Salul was among the hypocrites of the time. He sort of convinced the Prophet to show mercy and not to kill them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, fine, but may Allah, we're going to exile them, and may Allah put the curse upon them and anyone who supports or aids them. And so then they were exiled outside of Medina. There's three main sort of takeaways I derive from this situation. Is one, us Muslims, we have honor and we have dignity. We're not Christians. We don't turn the other cheek if you slap us. We retaliate in the same way that you transgressed upon us. Okay? We don't seek problems. However, at the same time, we defend ourselves, just like any human is able to defend themselves. Number two is that we're an ummah. We are a people of action, but we are also a people of ummah. What do I mean by that? We don't say, oh, this is happening abroad, or this is happening in Sudan, or this is happening wherever, and so we don't care. No, this is one Muslim sister. The entire ummah was going to go to war for her. And that's something I took away from this, is that we're like a body, a human body. If my arm hurts, I feel it, my whole body feels it. And so we have to always think of us as a collective and ask ourselves, what are we doing for this ummah? Are we just living to pay bills and save some money, go on vacation? How are you giving back? Are you donating? Are you contributing? Are you volunteering? Are you educating someone? Are you being educated with the intentions of educating someone? These are things we have to think about. That's the only way we will restore our strength, our honor and dignity. And the third thing that I want to also emphasize is, the third point I took away, was we need to take caution, take precautions, and take heed when dealing with Jews and mushrikeen. And I'll specifically tell you why. You might say, oh brother, it's just the Zionists that are perpetrating this genocide that's going on and causing this fitna and corruption. 1,000 years ago, they weren't Zionists. These Jews in Medina, they weren't Zionists, they're Jews. Okay? And I'll take you to Surah Al-Ma'idah. Chapter 5, verse 82. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. لتجدن أشد الناس عداوة للذين آمنوا اليهود والذين أشركوا ولتجدن أقربهم مودة للذين آمنوا الذين قالوا إنا نصارى ذلك بأن منهم قسيسين ورهبانا وإنهم لا يستكبرون. So Allah says in chapter 5, verse 82, you will find the most intense of people in animosity towards the believers, us, the Muslims, to be the Jews and the people who associate partners with Allah, meaning the mushrikeen, like of Quraysh, and people who believe in idol worshipping and associating any partners with Allah. And you will find the nearest of them in affection to the believers, those who say we are Christian, and that is because they are priests and monks and they are not arrogant. Okay, so basically what this ayah is telling us is the people who have the most animosity towards you are the Jews and mushrikeen. So this isn't me coming up and saying, oh, it's the Jews, it's not the Zionists. This is the Quran telling us blatantly that these people are the most hostile towards us. Okay? And so we need to take caution. We're not preaching hate or spewing hatred. We just, as Muslims, need to be cautious with how we deal with non-Muslims. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لكم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, with this story, this incident that happened, and multiple incidents, inshallah, if we get the opportunity to talk again about Banu Qurayza and Banu Nadir, we see that there's the same fate. There's betrayal, there's attempted assassination of the Prophet, there's poisoning of the Prophet. So we get to see a common occurrence with the people who are hostile towards us. But I'll say this, and we see that, I've asked the question, how did we come this far? How did we get to a point where we're not able to defend ourselves collectively? We don't feel that strength like we used to. I'll say that the ummah gets sick, but it does not die. Gets weak, but we restore our strength. How we restore our strength, we'll get to that. The Prophet ﷺ says, this is narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. He says, I heard the Prophet, Messenger of Allah, ﷺ, say, whoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. And if he's not able to do so, then change it with his tongue. And if he's not able to do so, then with his heart. And that is the weakest of faith. So essentially, we must take action. How we take action? It's in your own respective way. Is it donating? Is it stopping transgression? If you're out and you see someone oppressing another Muslim, for you to stand up and stop that oppression, right? That's the physical way, with your hand, stopping it physically. Then the second way is through your tongue. Okay, we go to work, we have co-workers, they're digesting all of that false propaganda. We need to talk to them. We need to explain to them the situation. We need to defend our brothers and sisters abroad who aren't able to defend themselves. We have social media platforms. We can talk up on there, right? Freedom of speech. We can share things. We can bring awareness. And then the last part, if you cannot speak out against oppression, then in your heart. So what does that mean? Dua. It's an obligation to make dua for our brothers and sisters abroad, and here, and everywhere. The entire ummah. Your dua in Ramadan, inshallah, is accepted. So make sure to continue to ask for forgiveness. I ask Allah to forgive all of us and accept our fast. Ameen. We shouldn't forget our brothers and sisters, and we should always make dua for the ummah collectively. But keep in mind the last part of that, when the Prophet ﷺ says that it is the weakest of faith. So first option is with your hand, right? Physically stopping or physically taking action against evil. Second is the tongue, and the third is in your heart. But just know, because what happens is people begin to immediately resort to that. Oh, brother, I'm making dua. That's great. That is an obligation. But is that the only thing you could do? Because just know that you're in the weakest level of iman if you're only doing dua. So you have to think of other ways to step up and contribute. Okay? Allah promises us victory. In Surah Al-Imran, so chapter 3, verse 126, He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما جعل الله إلا بشرا لكم ولتطمئن قلوبكم به وما النصر إلا من عند الله العزيز الحكيم. Allah ordained this reinforcement only as good news for you and reassurance for your hearts, and victory comes only from Allah, the Almighty and All-Wise. We don't dictate outcomes. What we dictate is actions, what we do. So we do our part, and Allah promises the victory. When, how, where, that isn't up to us to decide or even concern ourselves with. What we concern ourselves with is the actions that will lead to our victory and our strength. Why do we talk about Palestine so much? I mean, other than Masjid al-Aqsa being the third holiest site. I mean, if we just think about somebody coming in and shutting down this mosque and telling us to go home, how would that make us feel? Right? Now, imagine the third holiest site, thousands of years of our history. They're transgressing upon these. And then, not to mention that those same oppressors are the oppressors here, and in Sudan, and in Egypt, and in Jordan, and in Syria. They're the same oppressors. So when we talk about Palestine, it's not because they are Arab or Palestinian and they matter more. No, but it's because that those same oppressors are all over. Okay? And I'd love to talk to anyone after and see what we know about the slave ship owners and how 80% of them were Jewish. The slave ship owner, 80% of them that took place in the slave trade were Jewish. And I encourage all of you to go and research this. Abigail, Crown, Four Sisters, Hester, Polly, these are all names of ships. Go and look and see who are the owners. They are Jews. Now again, this is not to spew any hatred or single out any one community, but facts are, like what they will say is, oh, that is anti-Semitic. I'm Semitic, so I can't be anti-Semitic. I'm Arab, okay? So I'm not anti myself. Secondly, facts are not anti-Semitic, right? I'm stating facts. 80% of the slave ship owners were Jewish. So when we talk about Palestine, again, that isn't to talk about specifically Palestine. Obviously, Masjid al-Aqsa is a very holy site for us, and that's why we talk about it so much. And also because those same oppressors are the same oppressors in other lands. Okay? I will leave us with this, inshallah. And this is clear and cut from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, promising us victory, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. Do you think that you will be admitted into paradise without being tested like the people before you? They were afflicted with suffering and adversity, so much so that even the messenger and the believers cried out and said, when will Allah's help come? Indeed, Allah's help is always near. Brothers and sisters, the ummah gets sick, but it does not die. We will restore our strength. And inshallah, I want to make dua for our brothers and sisters. May Allah grant us victory. May Allah grant us victory. May Allah grant us victory. May Allah grant our brothers and sisters in Palestine victory and restore our honor and dignity. May Allah grant the Muslims around the world victory over our oppressors. May Allah destroy whomever seeks to destroy us. May Allah humiliate whomever seeks to humiliate us. Oh Allah, bring your justice on this earth, inshallah. Allahumma اغفر لنا وارحمنا وتقبل منا صيامنا وانصرنا. اللهم انك انت سميع الدعاء. آمين آمين آمين. قوموا إلى صلاتكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.